All right, welcome everyone. It's 11:30, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today for our first Power Lunch and Learn event. We appreciate you joining us. We are starting these so that we can help provide our members with information on topics that are power related that you guys are interested in. So we're kicking things off with electric vehicles. And we are live on our MEA Facebook page, as well as recording this, which will share this presentation with our members later on. So please make sure that all of your comments are appropriate and respectful, but that this is also an interactive presentation. So if you have questions, please raise your hand, put them in the chat box. Let us know at any time when you have a question. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker today, our Grid Modernization Manager, which is Josh Kraft. And he is going to be sharing all of his wonderful wisdom and knowledge about electric vehicles.
Thank you, Jennifer. As Jennifer said, my name is Josh Kraft. I'm the Grid Modernization Manager here at Matnuska Electric Association. I personally do not own an electric vehicle yet, but I am happy to say that I am in the middle of ordering the new F-150 Lightning. So I'm very much looking forward to my personal experience starting next spring. I have been looking into these vehicles for quite a long time and doing a lot of investigation. If you want to go to the next slide, I like to start off these conversations around electric vehicles, just kind of touching base on the different types of vehicles that are out there. And just starting, I've got these schematics on the screen with the internal combustion engines, and you'll hear them referred to as ICE vehicles, and that's the internal combustion acronym. Just as a quick run through, most people are probably pretty familiar with these. You've got your engine, you've got a fuel injection system, your transmission, you've got your fuel tank, pretty standard setup here. Something of note is that the transmission, and I know it says just the ICE contains over 2,000, but it's actually the transmission alone on an internal combustion engine has over 2,000 moving parts. That's important as we move forward into these other vehicles. I'm going to kind of get a little heavy on acronyms to start here, just to make sure you're familiar with them. But hybrid electric vehicle, or HEV, we're going to take an internal combustion engine vehicle and we're going to add a very small battery pack. And the battery pack in this instance is provided to increase the fuel efficiency of the vehicle. So basically, you're going to charge the vehicle from the internal combustion engine, then you're going to use that to power the vehicle in certain instances, and it's going to increase your fuel efficiency. So for instance, like the Toyota Highlander, there's a hybrid electric vehicle version of that. The Highlander is like 25 miles to the gallon, I believe, or a little less. And the hybrid electric version of that vehicle is actually like 33. So you get a fairly decent boost in fuel efficiency. And again, in this instance, we're just adding a small battery pack, and you see that label as traction battery pack on the schematic. If you go to the next slide, we're going to talk about plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So it's important to note the hybrid electric vehicles, you don't plug it in. All of the power comes from the gasoline in those instances. The plug-in hybrid, we're going to take a hybrid electric vehicle, we're going to beef the battery up a little bit, and we're going to add the potential to charge that battery at your home or at other locations. So the same moving parts, the same as the hybrid electric, except now you have the charge port, and you're able to run on the all-electric portion of the battery, typically around 30 miles in a plug-in hybrid electric. A lot of times what you'll see with the PHEV vehicles is that you're going to use the electric portion of the battery in the city, and you're going to use the highly fuel efficient like highway miles when you're traveling for long distances. We're going to jump from the plug-in hybrids to an all-electric vehicle. You're going to hear these referred to as battery electric, plug-in electric, or just electric vehicle. So BEV, PEV, or just EV. In these instances, we've taken the internal combustion engine completely out of the scenario, and we have a large battery pack in there. A lot of times for the either front wheel or just rear wheel drive versions of these vehicles, there'll be one motor. And in a lot of the vehicles now, they are all-wheel drive or automatic four-wheel drive. And those are going to use two motors or even three motors in some instances, like the Tesla Cybertruck, I believe. And you're going to get both a front motor and a rear motor, and that way you're going to get better traction on the road. Now, the actual transmission in the electric vehicle is down to 20 moving parts. So you've gone from 2,000 moving parts down to 20 moving parts. And what that translates to is a much greater efficiency. So for an internal combustion engine, you're taking the chemical potential energy of gasoline, you're burning it, you're making mechanical energy in the engine. You're then spinning your transmission, which is another efficiency loss. Then you're taking that transmission and you're applying it to the wheels. And all of those things have efficiency drops in them. And for an electric vehicle, you're taking the power directly from the battery and applying it to the wheels through the motor. So you have a much greater efficiency. You're not having a whole lot of losses there. I would be happy to answer any questions on the different types of vehicles before we jump into charging, if there's any out there. I'm not seeing anybody unmute or come off or come their video on, and I'm not seeing anything in chat. So I'm going to go ahead and move into charging. There's three different levels of charging. Level 1 charger is your everyday run-of-the-mill 15 amp, 20 amp plug. Is what you normally plug into. Some of these numbers you'll see on the screen are a little old, but they get the point across. Typically, you know, you're 15 to 20 amps for a level 1. It says 3 to 5 miles of range per hour. What does that mean? If you are at a fully depleted battery, so if you're down at like 10 or 20% state of charge on a battery, and you want to get to a full state of charge on the battery, that could take you 8 or 12 hours on a level 1 charger. It's important to note how many people end up on an empty tank at their house every night. So you're not going to be charging from a fully depleted state of charge every day. I'm just giving you an idea of what a full charge would take on a level 1. If we jump up to a level 2 charger, these are going to be like your electric dryer plugins, or maybe if you're a welder, you've got a welder at your house. So you're talking about 30 amps up to 80 amps now. The new Ford F-150 Lightning has an 80 amp level 2 charger. And on these, you're talking a 4 to 8 hour for a full state of charge time frame. And if you jump up to DC fast charging, or you see DCFC sometimes out there, you're going to, this is a commercial size, and you're talking 50 kilowatts or greater. The Tesla supercharger is a 250 kilowatt setup. These are charge times more in the minutes. So 20 minutes to an hour is for a full state of charge again. And these are, again, very large. These need 3-phase power. You're going to need a commercial installation. A lot of times they have dedicated transformers and things of that nature. Something of note, even on the level 2 chargers now, where we have like the F-150 that's coming out, they have a charger that's very large. It's a 19.5 kilowatt, 80 amp charger. So if you have an older home that has a 100 amp service, or if you have, if you are a residence that is maybe at the end of a distribution line and you're the only one on the transformer, and you have a 15 kVA transformer, you may need to both upgrade your service entrance to a 200 amp or add another 100 amp service. And you may even need to upgrade your transformer in order to accommodate that charger at your home. So it's something to think about with these larger level 2 setups that are coming out now. Any questions on charging? Okay, I'm happy to jump back to stuff later on if people come up with Oh, yes. So I have a question that the charging slows down for the last 80%. I think what you're saying is that the charging slows down when you get to 80%. And that's true. And I would point out the types of batteries that are in your phone are the same types of chemistries that are in your, that will be in an electric vehicle. So if you think about your phone, it charges really quickly between the 20% and an 80% state of charge. But you think about that last like 5, 10, 20% of charge on your phone, it takes a little while longer. And that's due to the battery chemistry, lithium ions. You can shove a lot of electricity into them when they're in that middle state of charge, but when they're very depleted, or if they're near full, you have to slow down the amount of energy that you could put into them at one time. So yes, that last 20% can take longer than the previous like 40% even. So that's something to note, but yes, good question. So we're going to jump into some electric vehicle myths, and some of these myths kind of arise out of some of the early adoptive EVs that were out there. You know, one of them is that electric vehicles can't travel long distances. There's a lot of range anxiety, is what it's called out there. And you can't drive from Homer up to Fairbanks. The newest vehicles that are coming out have 300-mile plus ranges. So you can go quite a long ways. And again, if you couple that with the level 3 charging network that's being built out this summer and next, you'll be able to drive from Homer up to Fairbanks, stopping maybe twice at most, and being able to charge 30 minutes or an hour at a time, and be able to make that trip, I would say, in one day. So, and then some of the vehicles like the large battery, the Tesla Cybertruck, I think has like 450-mile ranges. So there's quite a bit of range that you can get on the vehicles, especially considering even for a Matsu commuter, if you're driving 100 miles, 40, 50 miles into Anchorage and then home, that's 100 miles a day. Even in the coldest part of winter, you should still have enough range from a new vehicle in order to get you from your home to work and back comfortably. And again, I didn't mention this during the charging portion, but up to, anecdotally, we hear 80 to 90% of charging is done at home. So you're going to drive to work, come home, and then you'll charge overnight. So you'll start every day with a full state of charge. Next slide. That electric vehicles are very expensive. This is true for some of the luxury models that are still out there, even the F-150 Lightning. It starts at around $40,000, but if you want to go up to the F-150 Platinum, I hear that's going to be $90,000 or $94,000. The Tesla Cybertruck, I believe, starts at like $60,000, but you can get a $100,000 model as well. But there are models out there that are in the mid-range, mid-size sedans, like the Tesla Model 3 starts at, I think, like $30,000, or I've heard even about like $28,000. So there is quite a range, just like any vehicle type out there, in how much it costs. I guess it's what bells and whistles do you want on there in addition to it. There's also a $7,500 federal tax credit available for some of the vehicles. And depending, and I've heard that that's going to be adjusted this year, even potentially with some of the infrastructure bills that are coming out, but I don't have further information at this time. So next slide. There's only a few makes and models. Even 2 or 3 years ago, I would have probably agreed with this, but that's not the case anymore. There's no fewer than 5 electric trucks coming out in the next year or so. Some models that you may not have heard about is the Rivian. There's the Tesla Cybertruck that's out there. The F-150 Lightning is available for reserve. The GMC Hummer truck is out there. Even Dodge and Chevy are getting into the action. So those are just the trucks that are coming out, and there's a lot of other vehicles that are coming out. Cadillac, all the different brands are coming into, all the different manufacturers are coming up with their own models. Next slide, please. So the batteries don't last, and they're too expensive. So the standard warranty anymore on an electric vehicle battery is 8 years, 100,000 miles. So that's right in line with what you would expect on any internal combustion engine, actually better in some cases on some of the motors that are out there. And even after 100,000 miles, in this case for Tesla at 160,000 miles, the battery still operated at 90% of what it was originally intended to do. So if it was a 75 kilowatt hour battery, when it first started out, it would still be a 68 kilowatt hour battery after 160,000 miles. And this has been played out in real world data collection. Next slide, please. There's nowhere to charge in Alaska. And this says South Central, but I would expand to Alaska. I said earlier, you know, over 80% of your charging occurs at your house. So it's only for those longer trips that you're going to need additional charging. And the Volkswagen settlement funding, if you're familiar with that, has been awarded. And there is a network of level 3 chargers being deployed this summer through next summer that will enable drivers from Homer and Seward all the way up to Fairbanks. There's additional plans for locations. I'm sorry, I jumped into this here, but there's additional plans from folks to get all the way to Canada for locations in places like Tok and Delta Junction, Glen Allen, Palmer, those kinds of locations. I am happy to say that within MEA service territory, the Chugiak Three Bears and the Trapper Creek Three Bears are both getting, excuse me, are both having level 3 installations done. And I think they're still hoping to be done this year. I see that somebody mentioned that there's leafs, bolts, or volts for 6 to 8 grand available. Are all chargers in Alaska proprietary or universal for all manufacturers? The level 3 chargers that are being installed with Volkswagen settlement funding are going to be public chargers. So I think what you're referring to is that a Tesla supercharger can only charge a Tesla vehicle. However, any charger can charge a Tesla. It just requires a special adapter. And then there's different styles of chargers out there. There's some specialization between manufacturers, but that's becoming a little less of an issue as they work some of their differences out. But yes, all of the level 3 chargers should charge all of the different vehicles that are out there. I see a question on cold weather, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping back to questions here, but I want to answer these as they're fresh in people's minds. There is a impact of cold weather on, the question is, how does the cold weather affect batteries, especially those minus 20 mornings? The answer is, we do not have the exact data. However, anecdotally, we hear at about 0 degrees, you're going to see a 40% reduction in range. So I would expect something like a 50% reduction in range down at, you know, minus 10 or minus 20. But again, even on the newer vehicles that have 300 to 450 miles of range, that should still be plenty for your daily driver. So you are definitely going to see a reduction in range. However, the batteries are a large part of why there's a reduction in range is they are built to condition themselves. So they're going to keep themselves warm and keep themselves in an operational temperature so that they don't freeze and you don't have any warranty issues. Next slide, please. So I want to talk real quick about the operational cost differences. So, you know, why would I be interested in an electric vehicle versus a gas vehicle from an economic perspective? A 2021 Tesla model range, the numbers are on the screen here. Basically, we're comparing a Model 3 Tesla, a brand new one, versus a 17 mile per gallon gas vehicle. And this is at $3.70 per gallon and in MEA service territory. If you go to the next slide, we're going to see if you drive 15,000 miles per year, you're going to save $2,500 in fuel savings or in annual savings. This is both because of the reduced maintenance from the reduction in moving parts, reduction in brake wear. There's a thing called regenerative braking for electric vehicles, whereas instead of using the brakes to slow down, you actually use the motors, and it actually pulls electricity back into the motors and stores it in the battery. So as you go downhill, you're actually creating energy and saving it in the battery to use for a later time. So you could see significant savings on an annual basis. This is in addition to any tax credit you're going to get. And again, for certain vehicles, there is already price parity. As I said, you know, the F-150 is coming out. If you compare a gas F-150 versus an electric F-150, they are on par with each other. Next slide, please. So I wanted to stop here and go to what is the implied gas cost in this cost difference. That was at $3.70 or $3.30 a gallon. And no, $3.70 a gallon. I'm sorry.
Josh, thank you. Which vehicles was it comparing, the ICE versus the electric in that last slide?
So what's on here is this is the Tesla Model 3 long range, 398 per miles per kilowatt hour. And this is versus a 17 mile per gallon vehicle. You could boost that up 370 per gallon. So those are the numbers that are used. There's any number of calculators that are available online. I personally like to go to fueleconomy.gov. There's quite an exhaustive list of electric vehicles, plug-in hybrids. They've got all the ICE vehicles that are on there. And you can compare directly the vehicle that you have versus the vehicles that you're looking at purchasing. There's quite an extensive list. There's a lot of information there. And in addition to the information on the tax credits that are available. So did I answer your question there? I think I did. These are the factors that went into that.
Yeah, thank you. I was just curious if this was based on, you know, lower 48 gas costs or hours up here.
No, this is up here. You can change any of these calculators that are available. I know that even Alaska Center for Energy and Power actually built a calculator for Alaska, so you could kind of enter in which region you're in. I don't have a link for that one, but if you Alaska Center for Energy and Power EV calculator, I see Colleen's on here, or never mind. I'm not sure if anybody from ASEP's on here right now, but you could definitely just search for their calculator and you could pull that up. But those are adjustable depending on the numbers you're seeing. I'm trying to read the questions that are in the chat box real quick. Per charge at the charging station. You know, that's going to depend on the actual rates that Three Bears comes up with. Right now, there's quite a bit of discussion around the sale for resale of electricity within the RCA. And it's actually not legal right now to resell electricity. So Three Bears will probably, I can't speak for them and I don't know exactly what will be the, oh, please repeat the question. The question is, what would be the average cost to the consumer per charge at the charging stations? What would be the cost for 80% recharge? And so the answer is, I'm not completely sure at this time. It will depend on how much Three Bears or how Three Bears and the other charging locations recoup their costs, and whether they're going to be trying to pay for operations and maintenance, some of the other things that go along with it. They'll probably be charging by the minute or by the charging session. And as I said, because they can't recharge for resale of electricity at this time. Oh, Colleen put the ASEP web calculator in there. So I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for you on the recharge. Based on some of the numbers I've done, it would be like $10 to $15 for a complete, for 80% recharge. I have a question from Facebook Live. Will there be any discounted rates of off-peak rates for EV owners? At this time, that's not something that's being considered. Well, I would say we're considering a lot of different things, but there's nothing in the works right now to apply that. I know that's done in lower 48. If all switch to EV, would MEA be able to meet demand? What energy source would MEA use to meet the demand? If everyone in MEA service territory switched overnight, I think we might be hard pressed to meet that demand. But I have done calculations and analysis based on Bloomberg projections of EV adoption through 2050, or I believe through 2040. And yes, we will be able to meet that demand. And actually, we are looking into, there's two issues there. One is an increase in energy sales, but there's also an increase in energy demand. As you know, if everybody that uses an electric vehicle comes home at night and starts charging at 6 p.m., that's a significant increase in peak demand on our system, especially in the middle of winter. And we are looking into ways to mitigate that, whether it would be a time of use rate, as another question, the earlier question said, or whether that's demand side management, where we basically ask the members not to charge at 6 p.m., but maybe wait till the middle of the night. If you're not going to use the vehicle till 6 a.m., can you charge between, say, like 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. and get a full charge? That means that our peak load stays down, but we're still doing the energy sales. The energy source right now would be natural gas. I know that we do have an increase in hydro allotment and an increase in hydro from the new Bradley Lakes projects. But I think a lot of that would be natural gas as per our Aklutna generation station. And yeah, I've mentioned the peak demand by charging at night, and that's a lot less than 12 gallons at the pump. Are there any other questions, Sabrina or Jennifer, that are coming in or that I missed? I'm happy to cover them.
No other questions, but we just wanted to invite if any of our members that are with us right now on Zoom that do have an electric vehicle, if you wanted to maybe share your experience, what it's been like driving one, what you do drive if it's an electric vehicle. So if there's anyone on here that wanted to share their own member experience, that would be great.
Colleen, go ahead.
Thanks, Josh. This is a great overview presentation. I'm really glad that you did this to kind of address some of these myths. I have a Bolt electric vehicle. I originally bought a used 2017 Bolt, so it's Chevy, and it's a fully electric vehicle. I then traded it in and got a 2021 Bolt, and I really love mine. I still get great range. I'm in Wasilla, and I travel once or twice a week to Anchorage for work to be able, and so I still get plenty of range even in the winter time. Like Josh said, you definitely have reduced range because of the cold, as it's using its energy to keep the battery warm, and as you use heaters and stuff, we definitely see reduced range. I'm fortunate enough that I have a heated garage, so I can keep it in there overnight, and we have a level 2 installed in our garage, so even if I had to go to Anchorage 2 days in a row, I can easily charge it overnight and have a full charge ready in the morning. And it runs great. I definitely have fuel savings compared to even my really efficient car that I had before. I got like 30 to 35 miles to the gallon. And when I need a new car, though, this is still like my increase in my electric bill is still a lot less than what I was paying for fuel and maintenance costs. So I have a little blog that I wrote about it last year. I can throw in the chat if other people want to know about it. It hasn't done the update since I traded in for the newer Bolt, but happy to answer any questions about using an electric vehicle too.
So I'm sorry, Jennifer, I just want to make two comments off of that. One is the comment about storing it in the garage. While that's a great way to do this, and a lot of Alaskans do have garages, those that don't, you don't have to worry about the battery freezing overnight or anything like that, especially if it is plugged in it will continuously use the battery, the energy in the battery to condition itself and keep it in a safe range. So you don't have to worry about the battery freezing or anything like that overnight, especially if you tell it what time you're gonna, most of these vehicles are very, very smart. If you tell it what time you're gonna need it in the morning, it's gonna condition itself and be ready for you to use it at that time. Another thing to note is, Colleen did mention, there was a small increase or an increase in our electric bill. That is accounted for in the total savings. So there's an increase in your electricity bill, but there's a very large decrease in your fuel usage bill. So that is accounted for in all of these calculators. So Jennifer, sorry if I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to ask if any of our other members that are joining us, have you thought about getting an electric vehicle? Just kind of taking a temperature on where people are at. I know definitely driving around the valley now in Eagle River, I don't think you can be on the road at any point now without seeing an electric vehicle here and there. So I think we're certainly seeing a lot more of them on the road now than even just a few years ago. So it's kind of interesting and fun to see them and point them out. But just curious if anybody else has been looking at them, or a specific type of electric vehicle, or if you have any other specific questions on this topic that you want us to look into. We are more than happy to do that as well. And then just to mention also, MEA is putting together a member-led innovation community committee. And part of that committee's role is going to be helping us shape kind of the power of our future. And so if you're interested in things like time of use rates and renewable generation and all these other different options that are out there that are power related, and you'd be interested in sharing your passion with other folks on this innovation committee, we would love to have you. So if you're interested in joining that committee, you can shoot us an email to pr@mea.coop. And we'll send you all the information about that. We'll also drop that information in the chat box. And unless there's any other questions, we got one more question in the chat box. What can DOT do to partner with MEA and other electricity providers to support charging station planning and rollout? I'll let Josh.
Yeah, Anna, I guess, Jennifer, can you provide her my contact information? I'm happy to provide more information there. A lot of the charging locations were actually determined via the Volkswagen settlement awards through Alaska Energy Authority. And basically they were laid out based a lot on geography. I mean, you almost have to have one in Trapper Creek. You have to have one in Cantwell. You have to have one in Healy. There's certain locations that you almost have to have a charger. And the other locations were based on 45 to 75 miles of distance from those locations, and then trying to fill in the gaps. But I'm happy to talk with you far more about that and talk in general. I see a question from Alaska Intuition about the corridor from Fairbanks to Homer. That is an Alaska Energy Authority. So they set up the corridor and chose the locations. And I believe they've got some presentations that they've done, and there's probably some more information on how they chose where those are. Again, as I said, they laid out a lot on kind of where the locations are that have three-phase power. And, if you look at the map, there's a very long distance between Trapper Creek and Cantwell. So you're kind of dictated, you have to have one in Cantwell, you have to have one in Trapper Creek. It's 100 miles between those locations. And the same thing as you go east, you're going to have one in Delta Junction. You're going to have one in Toke, trying to get to Canada. There's just not a whole lot of places in between in order to put those large level 3 chargers in. Having said that, there is some battery backup setups that could happen, but that's another topic. I hope I answered that question.
And then I think there was a question or a comment from Darius.
Do you mean the kilowatt hours needed to drive from Wasilla to Anchorage? You know, I haven't sat down and done the calculation, and that would change depending on the vehicle that you're driving. So the larger trucks are going to need more kilowatt hours than Colleen's Bolt. But, you know, most of those vehicles, as Colleen said, she doesn't really have an issue getting to and from Anchorage and back, living in Wasilla. So that the ranges are fairly well stated in all of the different literature on electric vehicles. Did I miss any questions or comments in there to address? I'm trying to keep up with the chat, but as I talk, I see stuff coming in. So please let me know.
No, I think that's all we're seeing question-wise, as well as on our Facebook page. But we'll just wait a couple seconds to see if there's any others that get dropped in here. And so we do want to invite everyone to our next Power Lunch and Learn. It's going to be next Tuesday, again with Josh. And in that Power Lunch and Learn, we're going to talk about MEA's net metering program, which is another, I guess, term or word for renewables, and understanding how our members can safely integrate personal renewables, solar or wind, into our system. So if you've been interested maybe in getting some solar at your house, or some wind or other types of power generation, and you want to know how that works into connecting with our grid and our system, we are going to have all sorts of information about that next week for our Power Lunch and Learn topic. And it will be the same exact Zoom link that was for this meeting, as well as the same time, 11:30 to 12:15. And we'll be doing more of these Power Lunch and Learns in the future. And so if you have a topic idea for us, we would love to hear it. You can shoot us an email, pr@mea.coop. And we really enjoy getting the opportunity to meet with our members and talk about really fun power stuff, and give us the chance to nerd out and share all our knowledge with you, but also learn from our members as well. So with that said, if there's nothing else or nobody has any additional questions, that will conclude today's Power Lunch and Learn. Thanks so much for joining us again. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be with us.
Thank you, everybody.